Hi everyone, Mrs. Olson here. Today's lesson is on the geography of ancient Egypt. Now, the assignment that is going to follow this lesson in PowerPoint is a set of lesson questions. So I think it's a great idea to take notes while you are watching this lesson in PowerPoint. So you can either do it with a piece of paper and a writing utensil, or you can open up another window and type your notes, and then you'll be able to use those notes on the lesson question. All right, and go to the next slide. So this says, let's connect. Let's connect it to our own lives. I want you to think about driving on the highway. Why do people use the highway? What goes on the highway? And where does the highway start and end? So think about where each one of you lives. Everybody's driven to the store or to school or to somebody else's house. Everybody's been on a highway. Now, why did you use it? Think about that for a second. What did you use when you went on it? Probably a vehicle, right, to get you from here to there. And then I want you to think about this kind of big picture. Have you looked at a map? Where does that highway start and end? Has anybody ever driven from the Northwest, Seattle, Federal Way, Tacoma, wherever it is that you live in Washington, and drive all the way down the coast to Disneyland? Where does I-5 start and where does it end? Have you driven on I-90? That goes across Interstate I-90 is Interstate 90. It goes across the United States. Has anybody ever been on that and gone all the way across the continental United States? Okay, so we've got the highway in our mind for when we study the Nile River. Okay, who's been here? Here's downtown Seattle. This is I-5 right here. This is the Seahawk Stadium. Okay, now let's review just a little bit. And what can you tell me about Mesopotamia geography? Think, maybe say it out loud. Where is it? Is it dry? Are there rivers? What types of people settled there? Okay. Number 2, between what 2 rivers did Mesopotamia lie? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If you said the Tigris and Euphrates, you are correct. Good job. And what type of soil did the Fertile Crescent have? So the Fertile Crescent is where Mesopotamia was at. What type of soil? If you said silty soil or a soil that has silt in it, you are correct, which is why the Fertile Crescent is named the Fertile Crescent, because of the silt that was left behind in the floods. All right, so we're going to start with the geography of Egypt, and I chose this painting because it gives you an idea of how long and how wide the Nile was in some areas, and then the peoples that used the Nile and how they settled along the banks. Okay? So before we begin, let's talk about our learning target, and it says explain. You will be able to explain how the geography of the Nile River influenced where people settled and how they lived. Okay, so you were learning about peoples moving in the prehistoric times. You know that they have settled in Mesopotamia in the Fertile Crescent, and they are spreading out over the world in areas that are conducive or habitable for living. And so if you have a water source, it's going to allow you to drink water, but also to water your crops and to give water to your livestock. Okay, so let's put Egypt on a world map. So what I did with this one, I'm going to move us up just a little bit. What I did with this one is hold on, is to give us the continent of Africa, okay? Now here is Europe to the north of Africa, and this area is called the Middle East, and here was the Fertile Crescent, right in there, okay? So here is Egypt. It is in the northeast corner of the continent of Africa. All right. So let's go back to our geography skills and use some geography theme, a term, and that is location. So here I wrote Egypt is at the point where Africa and the Middle East meet. So right here, it's at the point where Africa and the Middle East meet, okay? Now, to use our skills, maybe you can even use a term here. When I say that Egypt is at 26 north and 30 degrees east, what type of location are we using? It's a specific term. So if you pinpoint the middle of Egypt, that is 26 north and 30 east. Okay, I'm going to move me again. And relative location is this description here saying that it's at the point of Africa and the Middle East meeting, and 26 north and 30 east is absolute location. Okay. So here we have another map. I want you to get familiar with where Egypt is located and the shape and what's around it so that you really get an understanding of where it is at in the world, okay? So we are going to be talking about the Nile River. It actually starts in this area of Egypt, okay? And it flows down to the Mediterranean Sea, okay? Anytime you see a star in a circle on a map, it's going to mean that that is the capital. So the capital city of Egypt today is Cairo. And then I want to show you this one too. Here is a globe. Here is Africa, Europe, Asia, and then this highlighted portion in Northeast Africa is Egypt. Okay. Okay, more maps. Whoops, hold on one second. More maps. All right, so don't worry about this part right here. I just want to give us another picture because all of these maps look just a little bit different. And I want us to be able to find Egypt on any kind of map, okay? So once again, here is the Nile. This is considered Upper Egypt because the elevation is actually up a little bit higher. This is where the Nile starts. Well, you can see that it goes down here. Where's my cursor? You can see that it goes down here, okay? So it flows down towards the Mediterranean. Okay, here we go. Place, another theme of geography. So in Egypt, they actually get 2.5 inches of rainfall each year. Now in some of our rainiest months in the state of Washington, we might get 2.5 inches in a month. Okay, the Nile River, it floods. And this is actually due to the rains in Ethiopia to the south. So we'll look at another map, but beneath, south of Egypt, that's where Ethiopia is located, and they have big rains that make the Nile flood. So over the banks it flows, and you know this from Mesopotamia. It leaves sediments needed for trees, plants, and crops to grow. So again, it's leaving that silt behind from the floods, and this helps to nourish all of the plants that grow along the banks of the river. Okay? Now, when we talk about Egypt, it is going to be divided into two sections, Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. Okay? So you want to think of Upper Egypt being in the south, and that is because it has higher elevation, okay? So there are actually some mountains and there's desert, but this allows the Nile to flow down to the actual Sahara Desert and then out to the Mediterranean, okay? And then the closer that we get to the Mediterranean, this is called Lower Egypt. And so this is in northern Egypt. And again, lots of desert with wide valleys, lots of sand, lots of sun. Okay? All right. So how else could we describe geography, the geography of Egypt? So there are oases. I'll show you some pictures of those. That's when you see water sources in the middle of the desert, and there might even be enough water to water a tree, a palm tree, for example, maybe a date tree. Okay, so there is desert there. You can see mountains, especially in Upper Egypt. There are coastal areas because the Red Sea is to the east and the Mediterranean Sea is to the north. There are river islands in the Nile, and there are actually wetlands. Okay? Many plants and animals, including crocodiles, cobras, jackals, and gazelle, live in Egypt. And this note, I want you to know that ancient Egyptians, we know that there were elephants, hippos, leopards, and cheetahs because the ancient Egyptians left us paintings and carvings, which means that they came into contact, they were living amongst these types of animals, okay? And now in Egypt, you don't see these animals. They were once common, but now they are rare and extinct, and probably because people moved there, and probably because they hunted them. Okay, so once again, here is a section of Egypt, the Nile River section, right? Upper Egypt, it has a little bit higher elevation. The Nile River, it flows down, 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 down into the Sahara Desert. Lower Egypt, and then it starts to branch out and flow into the Mediterranean Sea. Okay. All right, region, that's another one of our themes of geography. So describing the region of Egypt, it is located in the northern part of Africa near the Middle East. Now, you already know this, we've actually said it a couple of times, but to be able to attach a geographical theme, this is the theme of region. Okay? It is in the Sahara Desert. I've got a map that shows you that. The Red Sea is to the east, the Mediterranean Sea is to the north, and here we have this map again. So here is Egypt, right? This darker brown area is the Sahara Desert. Here is the Red Sea to the east, and here is the Mediterranean Sea to the north. Okay? And human features of geography. So the Nile River attracted people over 8,000 years ago, and that's because when you have a water source, you're able to get water for humans, for your people, and you're able to get water for your animals so you can eat them, and then also water your crops so you have that food source. Okay? Now, when people settled along the Nile River, they were hunters and they were also fishermen. They grew crops and raised animals because of the water source of the Nile. And we keep learning that whenever there is a water source, you are going to have a community. They're going to build villages and towns along the water source. Okay? They began to trade with their neighbors, and so when you start to trade, you start to make money, right? Because you need to pay for the things that you are trading back and forth. And you are also going to learn about other areas of the world and other peoples and how they live, okay? And part of that might come into learning how to build and also sail boats along the Nile, okay? So I thought this was a really cool piece of art because once again, we see the Nile back here. Look how long, look how wide it is. They are transporting many different kinds of things in different boats along the Nile. You can see that they have settled here and they have different crops that they are growing. They're able to water their livestock, feed their livestock. So take a look at the oxen. We've got some goats. Can anybody find any chickens maybe? I see some ducks here. Okay. All right, so this picture, you can see that they learned how to build boats and they were fishermen right there in the middle. This is an actual piece of art from Egypt, and you can see that this is one of those boats that we saw in the previous picture, but there are many people traveling in this boat. So not only did they use the river for trading and for fishing, but they also used it to transport people. Okay. And this is another one just showing you. So this is pretty representative of Egypt, actually a little bit later with the pyramids. The Nile River, you can see that things are able to grow along the Nile River. Okay, and that is the end of ancient Egypt geography. Hopefully you took good notes so that you can use those notes on the lesson questions. Bye everyone.